Hello, good evening. My name is Isan Taylor with I Love the Burg, and I'd like to welcome everyone to our next installment of the History Half Hour. These free history tours are made possible in part by the city of St. Petersburg. We're about to get started with today's host, Monica Kile, who's live in the Edge District of St. Petersburg, Florida. Her husband, John Kile, will be running the slideshow for us today. We'd like to extend a special thank you to the Edge Business District Association and the Edge District History Project for assisting with the content and material for today's tour. If you have a question during our live tour, please feel free to use the comment section. We'll do our best to work in as many questions during the live tour as possible. Today we'll be seeing a mix of live footage and slides with historic photos. Once again, thank you for joining us. Be sure to follow I Love the Burg on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, as well as subscribing to our newsletter to stay up to date on our next history tour, the latest news, exclusive deals, and all things good in the Burg. Now, back to Monica.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Isa. As Isa said, I am standing in the Edge District. I have a great cameraman, Andrew Harlan, behind the camera there. I'm standing actually on 1st Avenue South, and the Edge District spans a 7-block area, basically between 1st Avenue South and 1st Avenue North, and Martin Luther King or 9th Street on the east and 16th Street on the west. So just a small 7-block district. And we think of it mainly along Central Avenue. That's mostly what we'll be seeing today at Central Avenue. But we're starting in kind of an unusual place on 1st Avenue South, which for the first 20 years of its existence was known as Railroad Avenue. And the reason that I wanted to start here is because these doors behind me, which I find so charming, sort of speak to the original history of this area. The Edge District really is almost more historic than what we think of as our original downtown, kind of between 2nd and 3rd Streets along Central Avenue. And that's because this is almost the exact location that the Orange Belt Railroad came into town on June 8th, 1888. And these doors behind me, which as you can see, you can't walk into them. They're sort of floating above the sidewalk. But these, of course, were loading bays. And this was actually a wholesale grocery. And it was loading and unloading freight directly from the railroad tracks, which a spur of them would have run right by this building. And you can still see remnants of the old railroad tracks across the street. Andrew's going to turn and face you that way. And those railroad tracks, sorry, I'm losing my earbuds like to jump out on me. Those railroad tracks run in front of what's now a big empty parking lot for Tropicana Field, which is over on the right. Andrew will show you. But that empty lot was at one time a tiny hamlet called Wardsville. John, why don't you go ahead and throw that picture of Wardsville up? Okay, so those pictures up? Yeah, there he goes. Okay, so these buildings are what stood roughly where this parking lot is now 133 years ago. It was as I said, a tiny hamlet of about 10 buildings called Wardsville, named after E.R. Ward, who had purchased 5 acres here upon learning that a railroad was coming to town. He purchased that land from a man named Jacob Baum, who owned a large orange grove that extended roughly from where Mirror Lake is today to this general vicinity. So together, Ward and Baum platted the land and began selling lots in anticipation of the growth that the railroad would bring. So in the Orange Belt Railroad, and we're actually gonna start walking, John, down towards 9th Street and then head over onto Central Avenue while I talk about these pictures. The Orange Belt Railroad was owned by a Russian immigrant named Peter Demmin. He partnered with the local landowner, John C. Williams, to run the fledgling railroad to bring it to what at that time was really just a tiny fishing village in 1888. So after the first railroad rolls into town in 88, Ward and Baum do a really lively business in real estate transactions. Livelier, in fact, than John Williams and Peter Demmin did, because they couldn't yet give clear title to any of the land that they owned east of 9th Street, which we think of as our traditional downtown today. They couldn't give clear title because they had a bunch of construction debts still outstanding on the railroad. So the area around 9th Street, where the terminus to the railroad was, and which Ward and Baum owned most of, really became the heart of the new and burgeoning city of St. Petersburg, which was named after Peter Demmin's hometown of St. Petersburg, Russia. So even though Demmin's had built a grand Detroit Hotel at 2nd Street and Central Avenue, it was really here in this area around 9th that the first houses and virtually all of the first industry of the city sprang up. So things like lumber mills, grocery warehouses, even chicken coops were here in this area. The neighborhood was bookended on the north and south by the African-American neighborhoods of Cooper's Quarters, which was later became known as the Gas Plant District, and Methodist Town. So the city's earliest Black residents settled in these areas for the same reasons the whites did. And that was there was work here and land was cheaper here. And particularly cheaper south of the railroad tracks, or so immediately south of what we now know as First Avenue South, but was originally called Railroad Avenue. That area was owned by a white merchant named Leon Cooper, and hence the area became known as Cooper's Quarters. It later became known as the Gas Plant District when, in 1914, the city put the large gas plant there. And John's actually going to show you some pictures of those neighborhoods. John, you want to take over?
Yeah, we've been looking at pictures of those neighborhoods, and I've got a couple of interesting maps that kind of show what you're talking about there. This first map is based on a map that was researched by John Wilson, who retired from the St. Pete Times and the Evening Independent, and it shows, he meticulously plotted where all the African-American homes and businesses were. This first map is 1920. This area right here is the Edge District. We have Methodist Town, which is just north of the Edge District, and then what was Cooper's Quarters, and then the Gas Plant District to the south. So each one of those dots represents a Black family or Black-owned business. I'm going to fast forward this map about 30 years, and you're going to see the city of St. Petersburg in the 1930s, mid-1930s, passed a resolution that said Black families, African-American families, homes, and businesses had to be located south of 6th Avenue within a certain set number of streets. So all this area is where the African-American population was really forced to live through custom and just kind of standard practice. And then you still had those populations up near the Edge District in the Gas Plant Methodist Town. And of course, eventually we get the future side of Tropicana Field comes in and pretty much takes replaces the Gas Plant District. And we get a couple of interstates that would come through and really cut these neighborhoods into pieces, which you know is kind of the tale of how a lot of urban areas were treated back then. Back to you, Mon.
Okay, great. We're actually standing. We want to keep that picture up. Actually, if you could go back, Isa, to that picture that was up, because I want to show we're now standing on Central Avenue. And we're showing you a building from 1918. But I wanted to show this historic photo of Central Avenue being paved in 1915. So Central was paved from MLK or 9th Street at the time westward starting in 1915. And that really opened up this district. So until that time, a lot of the buildings in the area were actually located on Baum Avenue, which we're going to see in just a moment. And we had some businesses located along the railroad tracks, but not many. We'll see that in a few minutes when we see an early map. And please go ahead and show the next picture too. Great. So this brick building on the left side of the historic photo is the same building we're looking at right in front of us now. And you can go ahead and make that the full screen of the modern, of the live picture now. Actually back to live. There you go. So this is the Western Hotel built in 1918 and then pretty quickly thereafter renamed the St. Petersburg Hotel. And what's interesting about this, it's really a bookend to the district and one of the most important landmarks of the district. It's one of 4 hotels that were built in the Edge. But what's interesting about it is if you compare it to some of our other hotels that we had in St. Pete, places like the Vinoy Hotel or the Princess Martha, or even like the Don Cesar out at the beach, or what is now Admiral Farragut School out west. It's not anywhere near as grand. This is a much more modest hotel, and that's what it was catering to. It was catering more to a budget traveler, businessmen coming into town. The tourists were going to what we think of as downtown St. Pete and staying in the more tourist-oriented district. So this area was really catering to people that lived in St. Pete. This is where the industry was. This is where you came to get lumber. This is where you came to get your car fixed. This is where you came to buy furniture. All those things are what took place here in the Edge District. So the St. Petersburg Hotel, actually this building was recently on the chopping block for demolition. The developer that purchased it didn't quite realize how important it was to the district. And after much conversation with the business district here and the residents here, has agreed to save the building. So this building will remain one of the landmark bookends. And you're going to see it move through the street today, how important these cool old buildings are to the vibrancy that we see in the Edge today. So next to the St. Petersburg Hotel was a theater that you can see in that historic picture. It was called the Roxy Theater at the time of that photo. Now a parking lot. Beyond it, of course, is one of the new apartment buildings. So we have 850 apartment or condo units in the Edge District today. And that's just in a short 7-block district. And this is one of them. Across the street, we have a really good example. I'll give Andrew time to pan over there, of some of the sort of standard buildings that would have been put up to accommodate businesses in the Edge District. And Andrew, go ahead and film over this way. I want to show, and you can take that historic photo down when you get a moment. There you go. So from the black building through, which is now a restaurant, Booyah Restaurant, the white building next door, which is a barber shop, the blue building in the middle behind the tree is now a men's clothing store, and then Pizza Box is a restaurant, and then next door is a pawn shop. These buildings were all built between basically 1925 and 1939. And they're done in a masonry vernacular style. And what that means is masonry means basically not wood. So stone or brick or concrete. And vernacular means really no high style. So this is not a fancy Mediterranean revival style building. There's no high architectural academic standard. We're just building these buildings for function, not for form. And that kind of speaks to what the Edge was. It was really a place of function. It's where you came to get things done. All of these buildings would have housed things like automotive businesses or hardware stores. We're going to see some more examples of that just up here. We're actually going to film from across the street here and show you these buildings across the way. And then we're going to walk across and examine a couple of them up a little bit closer. So this next stretch of buildings is one of my favorite stretches. And you can see all the people sitting outside. When we cross over, I wouldn't be surprised if we get a little interaction from the patrons, so we'll be prepared for that. But Andrew, let's not cross just yet. I want to talk from across the street here. So this set of buildings was built between 1937 and 1940. So this one on the far right, Sinner's Paradise with the woman painted on the side of it, was built in 1940. It was built originally as a restaurant, which was somewhat unique for this area at the time, and continued to operate as a restaurant, later a package store. It was for a while the popular Cafe Bohemia, and it's again a restaurant bar, very active. We're going to go take a closer look at that building because it was built in 1940, but it has mid-century modern features that are sort of added onto the building later, so maybe 10 years later or so. Next to it, skip the middle white building, but look at that yellow brick building. That was built in 1937, and it's one building, but it's got 3 storefronts in it. And again, it's a great example of vernacular architecture, and it housed a print shop, a furniture store, and a tire vulcanizing business, which I'm going to tell you what that is in just a moment. Andrew and I are going to take this opportunity to very safely cross across the street and go up a little closer. Because I think what makes places like the Edge really cool are these buildings that have character and details that you might not notice at first glance. What I love about this building, of course, it's a great sign. This was originally sort of an arrow that kind of pointed, this business here type of a thing, probably added sometime in the 1950s. But it's got this great triangular overhanging concrete kind of awning to protect you from the weather. And then what's cool about it is that the front of the building, the facade of the building, is actually angled away. It's not flush with the sidewalk like you would normally expect, and you can kind of see that when you follow it along there. So just some neat detail in that building. We're gonna make our way quickly through here so we don't get too much music. So here we have a German restaurant, Plant Love ice cream restaurant, and a smoke shop. Shows you kind of the mix of businesses here. One of these was a tire vulcanizing business. And I mentioned that before. I had to look up what a tire vulcanizing shop did. And basically what they did is they sort of burned in the print or the tread of a tire. And to do that, they had to use effectively a waffle iron and apply really high heat that also served the function of sort of melding everything in the tire together. And the reason I tell you that is I'm thinking, God, I know what burned rubber smells like. It must have smelled terrible. And it really kind of speaks to what was happening in this district. I mean, this is where you came to get things done. You didn't come out here to eat, and how much it's changed in recent years, because as you can see, tons of patrons enjoying it now. The building we're about to walk past is actually a 2-story building. It is now a coffee shop. As we walk past it, I want Andrew to kind of do a close-up of one of the walls, and then we'll walk back by and I'll explain what it is. Thanks. So Andrew, just show how we've got the kava, tea, and coffee, because we're going to show a historic picture in just a minute that shows that these walls have been used in this way for decades. We've got some historic photos showing kind of cool old advertising on those walls in that same vein. Across the street, Andrew, so shoot across the street, this small wooden building, it's forward glass, it's a gallery and smoke shop. If you look it up, it basically makes bongs and that type of glassware. Beyond it, you may need to walk a little farther, Andrew, in order to see the building beyond it, is the building that we started in back of. So that way back, that white brick building is the wholesale grocery warehouse that we started at. John, I'm going to turn it over to you in just 1 minute, but first I want to show the width, if you can, Andrew, of this flagship bank building. I want to give a sense of how narrow this block, the north side of Central Avenue, is compared to, say, the block across the street, the south side of Central Avenue. John's going to explain why that is in just a minute. But first, John, show those historic photos we have of that area.
Yeah, right now we've got the ad from that vegetable wholesaler up there, Palmasola, and I just like how they abbreviated strawberries because they ended up with like one too many letters in strawberries. This is an ad for what is at Sinner's Paradise now, that really interesting facade building with that sign. It was a 24-hour diner. So the Edge District has always been hopping. 1945, its name changed to the Victory Lunch, obviously to go with the victory in World War II. Then it was a package store. I love this ad because it features a picture of a rail car of beer being delivered to them from wherever the brewery was, saying this beer is all going to this package store in St. Pete. So conceivably, you could hop on and ride it all the way there. There's a detail of that sign that Monica was showing us, kind of an illustration of that sign. This is not the same building that she walked in front of, but you can see where these verticals were used as advertising on these buildings. This one says vulcanizing. Now the one she passed said coffee, and I think they had kava and that sort of thing. Look at the condition of that same building just a few years ago, and how much life is now in that block when you look at these old photos. And I'm going to show you this ad for the Al May Hotel because this is where Monica's about to be. But the Al May Hotel, again, down there at 1027 Central, advertising steam heat and attractive rooms and some porches. Monica, are you down there at the Al May now? All right.
We're a little west of the Al May, but Andrew is lining it up so you can see it kind of through the trees, and it's the 2-story pink building across the way there. He's going to get you a better view in just a second here. It's now the Ash Couture Boutique. But again, a very modest hotel, no grand style on it, and probably catered to, modest budget tourists or businessmen. The buildings next to it, the white one is a 1938 building. That one's also 2-story. And then the adjacent ones were Papa's Taqueria, the Sands Market, which is a zero waste product store, which I think is terrific. The Sweet Stack Shack, which has great ice cream sandwiches. These were all built in 1945. And again, it's one building. It was always meant for kind of retail, but probably auto-oriented type of retail, tires, that kind of thing. Again, masonry vernacular, but I don't know how well you can see it from across the way here, but there is some detail on it. So underneath the Papa's Taqueria sign, you can see it has these horizontal lines, and they sort of extend across the length of the building. They have a very smooth stucco finish. These things are characteristic of an art moderne style of architecture, which these buildings are not high, grand art moderne, but they're trying. They're making an effort to be somewhat of an attractive building. We're going to walk down a little bit, Andrew. I'm going to talk about the building on the end of this block here. Oh, and Andrew, I should mention, to my left is the 1010 Central condominiums. And then back over on the north side of the street, you've got in the middle there the Italy Bottega building. That was 1946, built for $12,000. It was a store on the bottom and then apartments on the top. And then this building here that now houses the Independent Bar had an additional building immediately west of it that now is just an empty lot. But this building was the Florida Tire Exchange. And during World War II, they were a duly authorized tire inspector for the inspection that was required if you wanted to get new tires during World War II, because they were so highly rationed that you had to go have your current tires inspected so somebody could determine if you really needed to replace them. So that's the kind of activity that was happening here at the Independent. We're going to actually walk back across the street and give you, we're going to be talking about this fabulous new sculpture, which was just dedicated about an hour ago, in just a few minutes. But I want to give you a peek at Baum Avenue. And again, while we're here, Andrew, show the side of the Independent. And you can see that this portion of Central is really just kind of one building wide. It's a very narrow block. Beyond it, where that black car is Baum Avenue. And that extends across here. And we're going to walk kind of around this roundabout and show you a little bit of Baum Avenue. There's actually an evening market. What's the market called again? It's the Royal Palm Night Market that's happening on this empty lot here. We're going to walk just over to Baum Avenue and kind of shoot up the street. And then John's going to tell you a little bit about Baum Avenue. So let us get a perspective of that first, John.
Sure.
So here's Baum. And I want to point out, we've got Red Mason Mercado here. The Green Bench Brewery there, another automotive business that was a garage, effectively. Next to it is Big John's Auto Garage, one of the few buildings still sort of operating what it was built as what it was built as. So this is Baum Avenue. You can shoot down that way. You can see not much activity on this part of Baum Avenue, east of, what is this, 10th Street here. But 11. That's going to change. We'll tell you about that in a minute. So John, go ahead and show those maps that we have of Baum.
Yeah, and this is kind of what makes the area pretty different. When Central was extended out past 9th Street MLK, it met up with this district where Baum was, and the streets were offset. They didn't quite line up because Central kind of got skinny at that point. And city planners wanted to make Central wide all the way out there. So they had to do something, and they couldn't do anything. Baum was already there. There was already this vibrant district there. So basically that northern block of Central got sliced in half. And it's that sort of skinny block where those buildings kind of come right up to the sidewalk on both sides. It gives that area, that neighborhood, that close feel, all those businesses being so close up, as opposed to being, way over off on First Ave North. You have Baum Avenue right there with Green Bench and Mercado and all those things right up close to Intermezzo and the Thai restaurant and all those things. So that gives that area kind of a critical mass. And then on the south side of Central, the second map is going to show you just once again all those rail spurs. We think of the railroad, there might have been a track or two coming in and going down to the water or something. But no, over there, just on the south side of Central, was a roundhouse where the trains were turned around and all these spurs that led up into the back of these businesses. So the industrial aspect of this neighborhood was front and center during that period of time. Right back over to you, Mon. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm just going to tell quickly about, do you have that? You know what, John, let's skip to the roundabout that we're there
Yeah.
now.
Okay. Yeah, well, this roundabout, which was built in, I think it was 2007. But just recently we got this a great sculpture. It was actually dedicated today, as Monica mentioned. The sculpture is called The Sun on the Edge, and it was commissioned by the Edge District. And it is by New York-based Israeli artist Ilan Averbuk. And it was commissioned for $200,000. It is 30 feet tall. It is made out of recycled granite and steel. And one of the interesting things about it is you put a piece of art right in the middle of a roundabout. You don't want it to distract drivers, and it was actually designed so that drivers could see through to the traffic coming from the other direction. I don't know if anybody remembers many years ago when Clearwater put in a roundabout with a big fountain in the middle that was blinding drivers in high winds. So lesson learned here in St. Pete. And there's going to be some landscaping going in on this sculpture eventually as well, but it's a beautiful addition to the district.
Cool. Thanks, John. We're going to go over here now to film what is now the Enigma Bar. You can see it across the street there. This was originally the Wilmer Hotel. So one of the few buildings in the district that was built in a recognized style. This is Mediterranean Revival style, although it's a very modest example of Mediterranean Revival, kind of fitting with the district. Interesting thing about this building, it was built for August Hilton, who was the brother of Conrad Hilton, the famous hotelier. I wanted to know, we're going to walk up here, Andrew. I wanted to know a little bit more about that. I was trying to do some digging on what August Hilton was doing, building a hotel in St. Petersburg, and I couldn't find anything. The hotel was built in 1926. August Hilton ended up dying in 1929 at the age of 28, and you really can't find anything about him on the internet, at least in my sort of simple sleuthing. So I'm intrigued by this. You know what? Let's stand back a little bit for some music here. I want to show Intermezzo Coffee Shop and the adjacent Baum Market. So again, a masonry vernacular building, but it has some Art Deco style features with this vertical fluting on the front. Interesting about this building, on the back side, it has a really pretty glass block, sort of rounded, recessed entrance. So it basically had kind of a front entrance and an attractive back entrance, which really spoke to the importance of Baum Avenue and Central Avenue. So now you're building these buildings on the middle here that effectively have entrances on both sides. Next to it, in what is now the Baum Market, which is a food hall basically, was an old car dealership. We'll walk past it if you have some music. This was, and you can see this overhang here, this was the Pinellas Jordan showroom, which I had to look up what that was. The Jordan showroom, the Jordan was a type of car. John will show you an advertisement for it in just a second. Actually, John, why don't you go ahead and pop that up now and tell people what a Jordan was.
So Jordan Motor Cars were a short-lived company out of Cleveland, Ohio, that from 1925 to, or actually 1916 to 1931, made cars in all kinds of colors and styles, and they were one of the first to give them kind of exciting names. They had a car called the Playboy, and the Jordan cars were trying to appeal to a more country club set, as opposed to the Model T, which came in one color and was kind of the working man's car. Did not survive really much after the stock market crash. People did not have the money to be spending on fancy colors on their cars and that sort of thing, and it died out. But they made cool cars. Just didn't make it past the Depression.
What do you got up there, John? Keep going, John.
Keep going. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we already talked about the
And
Wilmer
actually,
Hotel? Yeah,
let's move quickly through these, John, because we're getting a
yeah.
little short on time there. So that's an
I
old
wanted
picture
to.
of the Wilmer
Yeah,
Hotel
this is
there.
that enigma, which again shows how far this neighborhood had fallen in terms of the structure there. That's where Enigma is. So vibrant now. Um, and then next to this area
Well,
was a lumber company.
actually, we're not there yet, John. Let's
You're not
hold
there
off
yet?
on that for 1 second. Yeah, make us big again.
You
I
got
want to
it.
show across the street the Monroe Block, and then what was the Smalley Green building that is now Bodega. This two-story yellow brick building, the Monroe Block, was built in 1925. Hence the name in the middle of the building. If you look up on the second story, you can see it says Monroe Block. It has a very attractive concrete surround around the doorway, and then the balconies are actually held up with cast iron pillars. Next to it is what I think is one of the prettiest buildings in the Edge District. It's now home to the Bodega Cuban restaurant, but it was originally an auto electrical shop. So it has to be, in fact, the contractor that built it said, here, I have a quote from him. He says, "I believe I have built for the Smalley Green Company the most attractive, exclusively electrical service station in the South. Their building and equipment is a credit to St. Petersburg." And I would agree. The building was just landmarked either earlier this year or late last year by the developer Blake Whitney Thompson, who purchased the building. And it has probably some of the best architectural details that we have in this district. It's kind of a blend of Italian and Spanish Revival, a little bit of Art Deco. It's got that, I don't know if you can see that sort of medallion with a woman's head on the left portion of the building. That was probably added later. But what a pretty building for an electrical car shop, effectively. We're going to walk down. We probably have about 5 to 8 more minutes and we'll be wrapped up here. But I want to show some exciting projects that are coming up. John, you can actually show that furniture store now, because that was, or the lumber store that was actually in the lot across the street that way.
Yeah, so there's a vacant lot across the street right now that has a lot of shipping containers, and they're kind of turning it into a marketplace there. This is what stood there before this lumber shop, and behind there, you can again see where the rail line came right in, where the lumber deliveries were being staged. This larger building here in the background is still there, and that was Furnish Me Vintage, was the most recent business that was in there for a long time, and it has been a furniture store for most of its use. I'm going to show you another angle of that building. Actually, here's just that diagram again of those rail tracks. I can get it. There we go. There is another angle of that furniture building, which right up until recently, there it is. Monica's got it live there. Has sold furniture for most of its use, and then you had again the gas plant right behind it. Here's another angle, and you can see that big tank. Standing off behind it. The area changed a lot when the trop came in, and I think Monica was going to take us up towards another longtime business over there with Fergs and everything. Is that where you're heading now? Yeah.
Yep, I am. But first, John, if you could make me big again, I want to show that lot that you were showing where the lumber business was, where you mentioned the shipping containers. There's one right straight ahead of us. It's black. It's got a rainbow flag on it. And then there's others sort of behind that U-Haul. And they were purchased along with this furniture building, which many of us knew as Furnish Me Vintage. That's the most recent furniture store that was in there. But the whole section was purchased by a developer who had plans for a development here, kind of a food hall, a lot of cool things. COVID, the pandemic kind of put a pause on that. Excuse me. So he decided to use the space and put these shipping containers here, and there's all different kinds of businesses, restaurants, and the idea of pop-up restaurants or pop-up stores as a place that small businesses can give it a go and see if their concept works. That's effectively what we're doing over there, and it's really part of what makes the Edge so cool. Across the street, and Andrew will film it while we walk, you can see the institution of Ferg's Sports Bar. And Andrew, make sure to film the sign with the rotating earth. Like much of the Ferg's building, he's been sort of adding on to this over the years. John's going to show you a picture of the gas station that he originally purchased in this location. Fine, no problem.
Yeah, there it is in all its
Okay.
glory.
Yeah, so then so he bought that in 1991, 92. He was a high school or a Pinellas County teacher, bought the sports bar with the help of friends and family, and then over the years has added onto it it's really cool if you go inside. The floors are wooden and the walls are wooden, and that wood, the floors came from basketball courts in old Pinellas County schools, and the wooden walls are made from old bleachers. And I walked in there the other day, we're on the wrong side of the street to show it to you, but it's really neat how he's kind of just taken all these casts off some other places, which the sign was another one of those. So that round rotating earth sign was actually originally, a lot of us remember it probably as the World Liquor Store sign, but even before that, it was the World Furniture Store sign. And the World Furniture Store and the World Liquor Store were down at 16th Street, just outside of the Edge District. When the World Liquor Store got bought just a few years ago, the sign was going to be demolished, and Mark Ferguson bought it, restored it, and put it there at Burg, so it just fits right in. Across on that same side of the road is 1560 Fusion, again, more apartments. And then, John, we're going to be coming up on Booker Creek. Why don't you go ahead and start talking about Booker Creek so we can end pretty close to on time here?
Sure. Well, Booker Creek, if you have a chance to go over to Central Avenue over there, there's a little overpass that you might miss 100 times, but there's this like little serene area of Booker Creek passing through there, and it just shows the potential for the use of that creek as we talk about the redevelopment of the Tropicana field area. There was originally a couple of families that lived along Booker Creek. One was the Farmer family of Farmer Concrete fame. Now, Farmer Concrete is stamped on so many of those hex blocks that are so known in this city. And I don't know if these are the farmers. Yeah, so Andrew can pan down in there. And in the smaller picture, Farmer had 3 daughters. I don't know if this is them in this picture, but the Farmer daughters may be playing in this picture of Booker Creek there. Mrs. Farmer stayed in this house up until the early 1970s when the interstate came through. It was at 1901 5th Avenue North. And when the interstate came through, we lost that house along with this one. This is from the late 1800s. This was the King family who had a lumber yard. They also lived on Booker Creek. And we know, here's a flooding picture of Booker Creek when it had flooded. I think it was in the 1980s, I think you said?
64.
64. And then finally, we see Booker Creek as it goes through Roser Park and heads out to Bayboro Harbor. We know it can be a really attractive feature. In 1988, when they were testing the soil to do the Trop project, they found 30 cancer-causing chemicals in it from all the industry that was around there. It was closed to fishing, and it's been kind of struggling ever since. But it's a huge opportunity as we think about that larger conversation of the neighborhoods and the environment that existed before Tropicana Field was there and what we're going to do with it next.
Thank you, John. So go ahead and make us big again, because I want to make sure people see where we are. We're on Central Avenue at about maybe what would be 14th Street or somewhere thereabouts. And you could walk by here, and if you didn't look over this wall, you wouldn't even know that Attractive Creek was there. So it'll be interesting to see what it becomes. John, while I'm talking, I want you to cue up that picture of Orange Station,
Yeah, I've
that
got it.
rendering of the new building, because I want Andrew to film back over. We walked past it while you were talking about Booker Creek, but I want him to film the old police station, which the new police station has been built just across First Avenue North, a beautiful new building. And the old police station was purchased by a developer, and they've just released their new rendering for what's going to go there. It's called Orange Station, and we actually got, I think, close to first dibs on these renderings, because they weren't supposed to be released for another day or two. I told them I was doing this tour, and they released them to us, so we get to see.
This is a scoop.
It's a scoop. But this is going to be the Orange Station. So the project will include 50,000 square feet of Class A office space, 61 condominiums, and 42 workforce rental apartment residences. It's going to have street front retail and 400 space public parking garage. So this area just keeps growing. We're going to walk down one to show you one more building, and then we'll wrap up. I don't know, John, if there was any other, I can't remember if there was any other pictures in there that we wanted to show.
Yeah, well, I mean, there was a section there on the backside of Baum Avenue that we didn't really get a chance to talk about. I'm going
If
to
you,
scroll through some pictures of the old Gregory Hotel that
yeah,
I'm
actually,
showing right
let me
now.
talk about that. So the Gregory Hotel is down on that eastern section of Baum Avenue that we kind of pointed down to. That building is going to be demolished soon, in a big new development, which, John, you can show that picture there. That developer, in sort of a concession to, recognizing the history of that hotel, because it was, again, one of the 4 hotels in this district, is taking some of the bricks from that hotel and making kind of an homage, if you will, to the building, kind of creating a framework art piece, that'll frame a pocket park. So it'll be it'll be a public park, but it'll be privately owned, as part of that development that I think you're probably showing. I can't see.
Yep, I've got it up there.
So I'm ending here in front of the Sunflower Building, because, again, this is one of the best, sort of high style, if you will, examples of architecture we have in the district. This is a Mediterranean Revival style building. Again, 4 storefronts. It has 4, actually maybe even more. It has, I think, 4 or 5 doors, and each one of the doors into these different shops. So that's the door into the shop. That door probably goes into the apartment. But it's got this great framework of this probably Cuban tile. And I love, you can tell if tile is really old, because this one is 3-dimensional. You can really feel there's like ridges on here. It's not, just a flat print on a tile. And then above, if you come back, Andrew, you can see above the doorway, there's this barrel tile. That's a typical Mediterranean Revival style. It's got this applied stucco, this great lion detail above it, and some cool stores in here. So Gracie Pasta and Provisions, Brooklyn South Meat and Cheeses, and a tattoo shop. And this really, to me, kind of sums up the Edge District. Across the way here, you have a huge modern apartment complex right across the street from a 1925 building that houses these really cool shops that all these new residents are going to want and need. Places to eat, places to buy your clothes, and it really creates an incredible vibrancy that I think a lot of cities would envy. So that wraps up our tour of the Edge today. I want to thank Andrew for filming, John and Isa for managing all the backside of things. I have to say a huge thank you to Barbara Vogelweed from the Edge District Business Association, who provided me with a ton of great information and pictures. I hope you all have enjoyed it. Sorry we've gone a little long, but we'll catch you next time. Thanks.